Brazil's a really interesting and exciting place for international investors in the oil and gas market at the moment, whether that's buyers of assets or banks lending to enable companies to buy assets in Brazil.
I think Brazil has been a focus for business for a long time, and you can see that based on the presence of multinational companies in the country for many decades. But what has happened recently was there was a big change in the political landscape of the country, and that is actually something that has been going on for the past 4 years, with the country becoming substantially more liberal and open to foreign capital. And there is also an element which is impossible to be neglected, which is pricing. So because of FX depreciation in the country and the fact that the Brazilian real has been undervalued compared to the US dollar, for example, there are low-hanging fruits. There are very good opportunities for investors that want to have more exposure to the Brazilian market.
Well, it's a really interesting time in the Brazilian regulatory and legal market at the moment in connection with upstream oil and gas transactions. We've seen, for instance, a recent resolution from the ANP, which regulates oil and gas activity in Brazil, to legitimize the taking of security over concessions in Brazil, which is a really useful move for international banks.
It's becoming much easier to do business. It's becoming much easier to understand what's required. I think international players are getting more and more experienced in the jurisdiction, and I think it compares very well to, for example, West African countries. So I think it's very positive, and investors who are interested in doing business in Brazil will find it possible to navigate with a little bit of help.
There cultural differences whenever you have foreign investors entering into the country, which might be smooth or become more swift if you can team up with a local player that does understand the regulatory framework, the legal framework, the FX regime in the country. So it's a way to somehow blend knowledge if you're entering into that market for the first time.
I think organisations who want to do M&A in Brazil and invest there should really understand the drivers of the seller. In particular with Petrobras, they have particular drivers because of their history, their unique history within the market, and that very much drives timetable, but also very key deal points. So I think having a good understanding right at the beginning of exactly what those drivers will be and what your response will be is very important.
The other key element is due diligence. What are you buying? Who are you buying it from? Is it tainted by corruption? Is it tainted by any action that should not have taken place in the past? The ANP, which is the entity regulating the E&P sector, has scheduled for the next 24 months at least 5 bidding rounds, and 5 bidding rounds of assets with very, very different characteristics, which plays to the benefit of the market and is a key component to actually reshuffling the market in a way that you can have opportunities for mid-cap companies, for small companies, and for very large IOCs. On top of all of this, there are also the IOCs that have been present in Brazil for a couple of decades now, that are seasoned players in the market and that still very interested in Brazil, are somehow reshuffling their portfolios, some of them because they want to have more exposure to pre-salt, some because they want to move onshore and have more exposure to gas-to-power integrated projects. But that basically means that there are opportunities for everybody, for players and investors with very different features and very different appetite.
Petrobras is doing a huge suite of disposals, which means there's a lot out there for sale, but also on the secondary market. I mean, we've been acting for other buyers, buying from other sellers at the moment. And, you know, I think there's just a wave due to the recent regulatory changes of movement in the market, and that's hugely exciting, and it means that there's lots of opportunities for everyone to get involved.